Hi, this is part two of a very occasional series. We were talking about allergies, but not allergy in the sense that we are normally taught to think about it. If you ask somebody what an allergy is, they'll tell you it's pollen, dander, dust, goldenrod, and it causes itchy eyes and sneezing. Well, back at the turn of the last century, the early 1900s, U.S. doctors had a much more advanced understanding of allergy. They realized two things. One, that anything, any substance, could cause an allergic reaction. That was number one. And number two, those allergic reactions could be very individualized, and they could be very extreme. I mean, we're all familiar with the situation of somebody who's got a hyperallergy to peanuts, and even a little bit of peanut dust can kill them. Well, that one couldn't be denied. So that one is now out of the bag and people know about it. But there are many, many kinds of foods and certainly many, 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 many chemicals and many pharmaceutical drugs that cause allergic reactions. You ever see those ads on TV when they say, you know, take Dominex and but let your doctor know if you're bleeding from your eyes or if you're, you know, and then they reel off this long set of adverse reactions. Well, those are allergies. But what happened? Why don't we know this? Why did all this consciousness end? Well, in the late 1920s, German chemical manufacturers, and my understanding is French chemical manufacturers too, as I've learned a little bit more about this, basically co-opted the medical profession in Europe and basically worked it out so that doctors no longer found that any manufactured product could be an allergen. That consciousness was wiped out. And it was all limited to dust, dander, pollen, and natural substances that nobody owned and nobody manufactured and nobody had a bank loan on. Why would chemical industry do that? Well, because they were creating a lot of new products and they didn't want the public to be aware of how dangerous these products are and how many injuries they can cause. So in the late 20s, these German doctors came over to the United States, and I'm not sure how they did it, but they persuaded U.S. medicine, they probably persuaded them with bags of cash. They persuaded the U.S. medical system to also disavow any knowledge of any allergens other than dust, dander, wood fire, smoke, I don't know. Anything that's not manufactured by a chemical company or a pharmaceutical company could no longer be the source of an allergy. And any allergic reaction that's extreme could have neurological component, could have gastrointestinal components, could make somebody stagger, could make somebody appear drunk, could knock somebody unconscious, could undermine someone's immune system. All those allergic reactions that U.S. doctors were reporting at the turn of the century with the birth of the industrial era, that was wiped off the map and made to disappear. So if somebody has an allergy to a manufactured thing and it's extreme and they go to their doctor, they can pretty much count on their doctor doing nothing for them. And we're talking about millions and millions of people. Now the doctor will take a fee. They've never forget how to do. But practice medicine, that's a little different story. So we were reading from a book by Theron Randolph, who is one of the guys that did not surrender. He's an American doctor who passed away. He was practicing in the late 40s, and he was writing as late as the 1980s and 90s. And he and a bunch of other ethical physicians, and they do exist, created something called ecological medicine, now known as environmental medicine, which basically says, yeah, there's all kinds of things that can cause, quote, allergic reactions. And some of these allergic reactions can be very, very serious indeed. Learning disabilities, autistic-like behavior, multiple sclerosis, headaches, inability to concentrate, hundreds and hundreds, as many negative effects as you can imagine, allergies can be expressed. And so their approach to medicine, when somebody had a, quote, mysterious ailment, was to look for an allergy in the big sense of the term. Look for the allergy, find it, and help the person deal with it. Contrast that with the 99.9% of doctors who will say, well, I don't know, must be in your head, pay me. What a business, huh? What a great business. You set up yourself as an expert, you get massive fees, you're entitled to abuse people by having them making them wait in your office 30 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour, however long it suits you. They come for help, you give them no help because of your own ignorance and arrogance, and then you charge them through the nose. That is a hell of a business. But anyway, there are doctors that are familiar with this. There are not many of them. And what's interesting is their books and their publications and their flourish of creative activities, which started in the late 40s and continued into the 80s, it's kind of died out. And talking with somebody, an ethical doctor who experienced this firsthand, he said that basically in the 1980s, when Big Pharma decided that they wanted to get into the psychiatric drug business, they were already in it, but now they wanted to turn everybody into a psychiatric patient and drug everybody and turn every medical problem into a psychological problem so they could put somebody on drugs for the rest of their life. They started shutting down this branch of medicine, this renaissance of allergy medicine, which was doing very beautifully. They were saving people's lives. They were doing incredible work. So those books are now mostly out of print. You can find them and used on the internet if you search around, but they're certainly not in the mainstream. And when you go to things like YouTube and even Google, it's just not easy to get information about this. So one of the things that I encountered when I embarked on this study is their attitude towards alcoholism and other forms of addiction, but primarily focused on alcoholism because that was really the issue of the the 70s and 80s, the issue of white middle class people. So that's what people focused on. So they have a way of looking at this ailment and a way of treating it that is very unique. And I'm going to read about that right now. And we are reading from, this is going to be a little hard for you to find now. I should have prepared a little better, but you get what you pay for. This is from the book An Alternative Approach to Allergies by Dr. Theron G. Randolph, MD, one of the great pioneers of ecological medicine. Well, you know what? I'm going to have to go to the other book. Okay. And this is from another book called Dr. Mandell's 5-Day Allergy Relief System by Dr. Marshall Mandell. Compulsive drinking is rarely psychological. So that's a very interesting point. After Dr. Wrinkle and Dr. Randolph discovered and enlarged their understanding of the addictive form of food allergy, a whole new perspective on compulsive drinking emerged. Dr. Randolph realized that in many cases, compulsive drinking is a form of food addiction, and alcoholism, an addictive physical disorder, not a psychological or emotional problem. Okay? I think almost everybody listening to this call has people in their family or certainly in their social circle that have developed serious substance abuse problems, whether it's alcohol or something else. And, very often these are people who were otherwise productive, positive, happy members of society. And bit by bit, they came under the spell of these things, and next thing you know, they're gone, and they can't find their way back. And to me, when I've seen people in that condition, it's always seemed to be a physical thing. Yes, there are people who, psychological problems can also occur along with this kind of a physical problem. But you see the physical aspect of this illness. You don't have to be a doctor, an MD, to see that. You just have to have common sense. But of course, if someone goes to an MD, they'll be told it's an emotional problem, or it's a spiritual problem, or it's a character problem. And not to say that there are people with addiction problems that have those problems too, but there's a strong physical component. And you'd be hard-pressed to find any information about that on the internet these days. And again, why? Because it's probably in the best interest of Big Pharma for you not to know. All right, an alcoholic may think or have been told that he is drinking to combat an anxious or depressed state of mind due to some emotional problem. And a drink certainly makes him feel better fast. But in reality, he is suffering from the addictive form of food allergy, and his anxiety and depression are nervous system allergic reactions to the food residues of the source materials in the alcoholic beverage. Excuse me, I'm going to cough. Alcoholic beverages are derived from the fermentation of sugars derived from the plant starches of a variety of grains and vegetables, or are naturally present in fruits. Bourbon, for example, is distilled from the fermentation product of corn, barley, rye, and yeast. Domestic vodka contains corn, barley, rye, wheat, potato, yeast, and possibly beet sugar or cane syrup. Beer contains corn and barley malt. Grape is in wine. Sugar cane is in rum. They all contain brewer's yeast. The presence of alcohol accelerates the absorption of materials from the upper intestinal tract into the system. As alcohol is absorbed, it carries along with it the specific foods from which that particular alcoholic beverage was derived, as well as foods or drugs ingested along with the alcohol. Any and all of the ingredients from which alcoholic beverages are made can produce an addictive form of advanced food allergy in a person who then becomes a compulsive drinker. Like the compulsive eater, the compulsive drinker suffers from withdrawal symptoms from one or more of the food ingredients in his favorite drink. These alcohol-related withdrawal symptoms often are so intense that the addicted drinker is driven to seek relief from his discomfort by having another drink, and the cycle goes on and on. So if you don't have one of these advanced food allergies, you may look at somebody that does drink this way and just be mystified. It's like, why can't he or she just get a handle on it and stop? If you realize that it's possible for someone to have an allergy to anything, and that those allergies can take very unusual and powerful forms, this is suddenly not such a mysterious thing. So Theron, this is Marshall Mandall, Dr. Marshall Mandall, is talking about a person having an allergy to corn, for example. And what is alcohol? It's super refined corn. I mean, not all alcohol, but if you're drinking like bourbon, for example. Right? So if you have an allergy to corn, imagine how you're going to react to corn times 100, which is what alcohol is. Now, Mandell goes on to talk about Randolph's work, Theron Randolph's work. As Dr. Randolph described it, compulsive drinking is the alcoholic's way of postponing hangovers by taking more alcohol as soon as the hangover symptoms appear. Unfortunately, as in any addiction, More frequent and larger doses are very often needed to control withdrawal symptoms and briefly regain the feeling of well-being. In cases of compulsive drinking, there is a vicious cycle of withdrawal symptoms and relief, which is followed by recurring symptoms that are temporarily relieved by the ingestion of still more alcohol until this endless cycle is hopefully interrupted at some point. In a recent radio discussion on alcoholism, the physician guest speaker indicated that a substantial number of alcoholics were chronically ill young adults who took their first drink when they were in their teens and found they loved alcohol instantly because it made them feel so much better. So this is pointing to a physical, infirmity, basically, a vulnerability. The doctor presented this fact, but he did not recognize its significance. To one who understands the addictive aspect of food allergy, it is easy to understand why these young people become compulsive drinkers so quickly. For many years, they had been suffering from the effects of chronic addictive food allergy. A young person could have been ill for years because of addictive wheat allergy that was perpetuated by eating bread, cake, cookies, pretzels, crackers, pizza, and spaghetti. Then, as if by magic, his chronic symptoms were almost instantly relieved when he took his first drink of a wheat-derived alcoholic beverage. That first very special drink cured symptoms that had been present for many years because the rapidly absorbed alcoholized wheat blocked the effects of the food withdrawal that were making him ill. The first drink was thus the beginning of a downward spiral into an increased intake of alcoholic beverages, which were rapidly effective food addiction treatments via rapidly absorbed food alcohol. So just to recap what he's saying, somebody might have a wheat allergy because medicine is so primitive. Doctors don't even notice. So this poor person is suffering their whole life with a wheat allergy. Wheat's everywhere. He or she eats wheat. They don't even realize that it's wheat that's causing them to be depressed or down or ill feeling all the time. And then one day they come across an alcoholic beverage, concentrated wheat. They take a sip and, wow, the bad feeling's gone until it wears off. And now they're feeling really bad. And they can feel good again by going back to the super concentrated version of wheat, the thing that they're allergic to. Here's a case study. Okay, so how a compulsive drinker can help himself. The compulsive drinker is suffering from an addictive form of food allergy to one or more of the foods employed in the production of his favorite drink. The addicting foods are usually present in his daily diet. For him to be cured, he must identify the particular food allergens in his compulsively taken favorite drink and eliminate these foods from his diet completely, or he will keep craving the alcohol that contains them. So if somebody is stuck in this terrible cycle, luckily, there's not an infinite number of things that could be causing it. It could be a wheat allergy, could be a corn allergy, could be a rye allergy, could be a grape allergy if wine's involved. It could be beet sugar allergy. It could be a cane sugar allergy, like in rum. So what someone with that kind of a problem would be advised to do is go through a process of discovery and see if, in fact, they are allergic to wheat or corn or rye. And if they are, the advice from this book, from Dr. Mandell, is you got to stop eating wheat. So let's say it's wheat. Let's say you discover it's wheat. You just stop eating wheat. In fact, without a single test, a compulsive drinker could conceivably eliminate all the alcohol source foods from his diet by finding out the ingredients of his craved alcoholic beverages, and make very satisfactory progress in controlling problem drinking. As long ago as 1948, Dr. Randolph was the outstanding investigator involved in allergy-oriented studies of alcoholism. I am indebted to Dr. Randolph for supplying me with the following case history of an abstaining alcoholic who had not had any form of alcoholic beverage for 26 months when he first came to my colleague. Dr. Randolph put him on a special diet that eliminated malt, wheat, and rye, the major ingredients in the patient's favorite drink. For 3 days, this reformed compulsive drinker, even though he had not had a drink in 26 months, went through a period of incapacitating withdrawal symptoms. Incapacitating, right? Not just a little discomfort, but really just putting that person down for 3 days. 2 days after these symptoms cleared up, he had a test meal consisting of wheat only, and his cereal grain triggered a hangover, as if it were an alcoholic hangover, that was, according to the patient, indistinguishable from the morning after syndromes that he had associated with his past drinking. Obviously, it was not the ethyl alcohol present in these beverages that had been at the root of his drinking problem. It was an addictive food allergy to the wheat from which the alcohol was derived. As you can see, the words hangover and withdrawal are interchangeable. He had abstained from drinking, but not from the foods that were the source of his drinks. He had maintained the same old wheat addiction, but he fought it on a different level by getting his daily wheat fix for 26 months by eating foods that contained wheat, and this held his wheat symptoms in check by preventing his withdrawal hangover until he stopped eating wheat. Thanks to Dr. Randolph, we have known about the addictive aspect of food allergy and its role in alcoholism for decades now. But this valuable information has fallen on deaf ears. Now that's pretty sad. So it may not be the case for everybody who develops alcoholism, but apparently it is the case for some people that they have an underlying addiction to the substance that the alcohol is made of, and that you can treat that person and resolve the physical part of their alcohol addiction by identifying the offending substance, wheat, corn, rye, and just eliminating it from their diet forever. And this has been known for decades. And I had to find it in an old paperback book that came out in 1979. So you have to ask yourself, what is going on? I mean, is the money that's being made from providing rehab services and drugs so important that we can't share this basic facts of medicine with the public? Apparently so. Apparently so. And then he gives some case studies. Now he has something to say about Alcoholics Anonymous. AA has the best of intentions, but unfortunately it is often attempting to deal with compulsive drinking that is actually an advanced form of addictive food allergy. Notice he said often, not in every case, but often. No amount of the buddy system or calling upon a higher power is capable of eliminating food addiction. The compulsive drinker, and I can't emphasize this point too strongly, must find out if addictive food allergy is the cause of his problem with alcohol. Because if it is, and he gives up the alcoholic beverages that contain the foods to which he's addicted, but does not eliminate those same foods from his diet, he is never going to be free of the symptoms that he is able to relieve temporarily by drinking in the first place. He goes on to say, I attended 5 local AA meetings as a guest observer several years ago to learn about their program because some of my patients were heavy drinkers. During a period following one of the meetings, I raised the issue of food allergies and asked if anyone attending the meeting was aware that he might have them. A number of hands shot up, and some of the members said that they also had allergic reactions to alcohol. However, no one had ever told these people that if they were allergic to commonly eaten foods such as wheat, malt, barley, sugar, corn, rye, yeast, etc., which are the ingredients present in alcoholic beverages, that there would be a delayed allergic reaction triggered by these foods when they drank alcoholic beverages prepared for them, as well as when they ate them. The directors of AA have been made aware of these facts, but they resist this knowledge about food addiction as a major cause of compulsive drinking because it doesn't fit into alcoholism as they see alcoholism. They do claim some, quote, cures, yet according to Dr. Randolph, the successes of AA are quite limited and actually may happen only when the compulsive drinker finds that the drink that used to give him relief no longer does so and now makes him ill. AA literature states that you can't help the alcoholic, only he can help himself, but without knowledge this is not possible in the case of addicted drinking. AA says the alcoholic has to hit rock bottom. But this rock bottom state is not when he has lost his job, house, car, wife, and children. And now here's the key. It is when his body's adaptation mechanism fails and the alcoholic has lost his ability to tolerate any alcoholic beverage, and he must stop drinking because the symptoms from drinking make him feel worse than abstaining. He used to have nausea, now he actually vomits. He used to get headaches, now he has severe migraines. He used to tremble, now he shakes violently. A message I once saw scrawled on the wall of a restaurant's men's room said, "Death is Mother's Nature way of telling us to slow down." The, quote, reformed alcoholic has heeded a similar message, but that kind of cure takes a long time. The allergic alcoholics who are able to stop drinking before their adaptation mechanism fails are those individuals who get relief from their symptoms, their withdrawal symptoms, by eating foods to which they are allergic and addicted. Instead of drinking rapidly absorbed alcoholic foods for relief, and these doctors are talking about alcohol as if it is alcoholized food, which is what it is. Many abstaining reformed alcoholics have an instantly available pocket full of corn, malt, and or sugar-containing candy or raisins, or they may compulsively drink sugar-sweetened carbonated beverages, or eat wheat, corn, oats, barley, malt, or rye-containing foods in a manner that relieves or blocks withdrawal symptoms. So one way that people who have this problem may be managing themselves is to always be nibbling on crackers, for example. Although AA and its related organizations have only the best intentions, they often fail, just like many of the sincere physicians, psychologists, and social workers who have tried to cure compulsive drinkers. I'm going to say something about this. Sincere is not an excuse for being stupid. You know, you see something not work for year in, year out, decade in, decade out, you're collecting a paycheck, maybe you should crack a book and learn something. So it's nice that he calls them sincere. Counseling, psychoanalysis, group therapy, family therapy, and medications, all big money makers, by the way, cannot help the compulsive drinker get to the biologic root of his problem if his alcoholism is an addictive form of food allergy that is never recognized or properly treated. And then he goes on to give a methodology for how to test people. And this is serious business. And but now you know it exists. Now you know that there are doctors out there. Maybe they're being censured. Maybe they're being threatened for being effective. I don't know. But now you know that there is a possible alternative to the ineffective methods that are out there. And this comes from Dr. Mandell's 5-day allergy relief system. That's the name of the book, and it's by Dr. Marshall Mandell. And I'm going to see if I can find the original stuff that came from the doctor that made this discovery, Theron Randolph. I mean, this should have been the most important discovery of the 20th century. I mean, how many hundreds of millions of people over the last 100+ years have suffered from this when it could have been resolved? Okay, chapter 10. And this comes from An Alternative Approach to Allergies, a new field of clinical ecology unravels the environmental causes of mental and physical ills. And this was originally written this is from 79 as well. And again, when did the big pharma get completely interested in getting involved in psychiatric drugs on a large scale? 1980s. Late 70s, 1980s. This book came out in 1979, and you don't see these books around anymore. I don't think that's a coincidence. Anyway, here we go from Randolph. We are so imbued with the psychological explanations of alcoholism that it seems strange to consider this problem as being related to food or chemical susceptibility. Frequently, however, an alcoholic is not a mentally sick person in the conventional sense, but a very advanced food addict. In fact, alcoholism could well be called the acme or pinnacle of the food addiction pyramid. And again, we're not talking about people that are just, don't know how to stop. We're talking about somebody that has a biochemical problem related to the chemicals of food and how it interacts with their nervous system. It is usually assumed that the alcoholic craves the ethyl alcohol in his drink. In most discussions of the problem, however, a significant fact is overlooked. Few people would choose to drink pure ethyl alcohol, even if given the chance. Alcohol is almost invariably found mixed with other ingredients or fractions, many of them related to common foods. Starting in the mid-1940s, I began to accumulate evidence that it was principally these foods, rather than alcohol itself, to which many alcoholics were addicted. Now, he said many, he didn't say all. So this may not work for everybody, but boy, is it something worth exploring. This insight related to developments in food allergy. It was Herbert J. Wrinkle, the same man who discovered masking and unmasking of food allergy, who first diagnosed allergies to corn in the 1940s. I confirmed Wrinkle's observations in my patients, and together we published a series of lists of food containing corn or corn products. Now, this is amazing. It took until 1940s for the medical profession, well, not the profession, but this path-breaking doctor, to discover that there are people that have corn allergies. Wow. Allergy to corn turned out to be the most common allergy in North America. So it wasn't discovered until the 1940s, and it turns out to be one of the most common allergies. And here it is, 2018, and I bet you never heard this before, and I would bet your doctor doesn't know. Why then, here's his question, why then had it not been discovered until the 1940s, years after the common allergies were described? The answer lay in the very fact of corn's popularity. Because it was present in practically every meal in one form or another, obvious or disguised, it was extremely difficult to unmask. It was only when we had compiled a fairly complete list and ferreted out the corn in numerous products in the form of corn syrup, corn starch, corn oil, and so forth that we could perform adequate tests. Got to do a sidebar here. We didn't have, when this book was written, corn syrup was just getting started. Archer Daniels Midland, or whatever that company is called, who used to buy, and they still buy ads on all the Sunday public affairs shows on the big networks. They bought those ads religiously, and what that was a form of bribery, because corn syrup is not a food. Corn is part of it, but it's basically a highly industrialized, highly toxic product with traces of mercury. That's not debatable. That's not controversial. There is mercury in corn syrup because it's made with industrial metals. They have kept this knowledge of corn as an allergy away from the American people with the help of the news media and the medical profession, which seems to be happy to just go along with just about anything. So when we see corn syrup is now in every single sweetened product on earth, and we know that it's one of the most common allergies in North America, we no longer have to wonder why so many people are sick. But Archer Daniel Midlands, or whatever their name is, or Archer Midland Daniels, whatever, they don't want you to know, and they paid for you not to know. And all the companies like Coca-Cola and Pepsi and all those companies owned by Warren Buffett and people like that, who, by the way, glory in your addiction. Make no mistake about it. They know. And that's why their money is in these businesses, because they know there's great money in addiction. Warren Buffett, the kindly old grandpa, he was once quoted as saying, this is out of his mouth, he loves the cigarette. This is before cigarettes became taboo. But he loved the cigarette business because they cost a penny to make, $1 to sell, and they were addictive. Okay? So these demons know exactly what they're doing. In fact, that may be why corn syrup is put in everything, because it has a allergic addictive quality to many, many people, and therefore once they buy your garbage food, they're going to be likely to buy it again to relieve themselves of the hangover they got from the first time they ate it, but they don't realize they're being poisoned. You see how this works? And then you go to the doctor gets paid, doctor gives you a bunch of drugs that make you sicker, Big Pharma gets paid, everybody's getting paid off enforced ignorance. Now, Dr. Randolph goes on. Soon after this discovery that corn is a common allergy, which we didn't have until the 1940s, I began to notice that many of my alcoholic patients had allergies to corn. Some patients, for example, told me that they became drunk only on 1 or 2 glasses of beer or a couple of shots of bourbon. Such patients were invariably highly susceptible to corn or to other ingredients in these beverages, such as wheat or yeast. It dawned on me that it might be these substances, rather than the alcohol per se, which perpetuate the craving for alcoholic beverages, which cause the bizarre behavioral changes associated with alcohol consumption. Since alcohol is rapidly absorbed into the bloodstream, it was likely that these food fractions were rapidly absorbed along with it, creating problems for the susceptible. So, you got an allergy to corn, it's dragging you down, you keep eating corn because it brings you back up, then you get a hangover and you go down, then you eat some more and you come back up, and you live in a miserable life. Not terrible, but not super happy. And then you have your first drink of supercharged corn in the form of beer or whiskey. And suddenly you're lit up. It's like, wow, I got all that corn that I ever wanted. But then what comes? The corresponding crash. And you need that corn fix again. And you crash. And you need it again. And you crash. And alcohol happens to be involved, but it's not necessarily the main player. Unfortunately, alcohol is toxic. It's toxic when consumed in large amounts. It's toxic when consumed chronically. So you're addicted to the corn, but the alcohol comes along for the ride and ruins your life. So here's the case study. The theory was confirmed in the case of Ted Parsons, who I first saw in 1948. Parsons had been a successful executive on the way up, associated with a large company in Chicago. After his rapid rise, he became, over a period of years, an alcoholic. He was suspended from his job and actually became a Skid Row type of drunkard. With his family's help, and we see this, I think everybody knows a story like this, maybe even in your family. Again, an upstanding citizen, a hardworking person, a good person, a contributing person, not somebody with all kinds of, hidden mental disorders, and next thing you know, they're gone. What explains that? Some deep psychological unresolved problem? I doubt it. I doubt it. Some incredible physical vulnerability? Much more likely. With his family's help, he managed to pull out of his nosedive, and he became a founding member of the Alcoholics Anonymous group in his area. But after 10 years on the wagon, he had begun to backslide. Another interval of alcoholism ensued, followed by a period of abstinence. This time, however, he recovered his sobriety, but not his health. When he was not drinking, he suffered from extreme fatigue and almost constant headaches. Why? He was addicted to something that he was continuing to eat. In preparing to perform food now, and which he could have solved, quote, solved, by taking a drink. But he had the strength of character to not do that, but it didn't make his life any better. In preparing to perform food ingestion tests with corn and wheat, which from an allergy point of view is virtually identical to barley and malt, he avoided these foods for 4 days. His fatigue was greatly accentuated for 2 days as a withdrawal reaction, following which he felt much better. So that book that I was talking about earlier, Dr. Mandell's 5-day allergy relief system, is basically saying, don't eat the thing for 5 days. And if you feel really bad, you probably have an allergic reaction to it. But don't worry, in 2 days, it's going to be out of your system, and then the next 2 days you're going to feel great. And then the test would be to take a little bit of it again on the 5th day. And if the symptoms come back, you nailed it. You don't necessarily need to go to somebody to do this for you, by the way. By the way, you're supposed to say, and consult your physician, which is very cruel advice. How many people can consult their physician, right? You call up, you get an appointment, you go there, you have 5 minutes, you ask a question, they don't know the answer, you're out of there. That's consulting your physician. And maybe you have a different kind of arrangement with your doctor. Maybe you have a different kind of doctor. But that's the kind of doctor that I know. And I don't know many people that know any other different kind, but you're supposed to say that. So consult your physician. So in preparing to perform food ingestion tests with corn and wheat, okay, we already talked about that. His fatigue was greatly accentuated for 2 days as a withdrawal reaction, following which he felt much better. During the test with wheat porridge, he developed progressive nasal obstruction and fatigue, as well as a tautness of the nape of the neck and delayed dizziness. Reactions persisted for several days. That happened to me with something once. My neck, the nape of my neck got tight, and then I became incredibly dizzy later, and it lasted for days. And nobody I talked to, medical, had a clue. They acted like they'd never heard of it. I've never heard of it. Some nasal symptoms of fatigue were still present prior to Parsons' corn test 4 days later. The trial ingestion of corn porridge and corn sugar was also followed by a progressive increase in fatigue and some staggering, just from eating corn porridge. Fearful that he might head for the nearest bar on the way home, I placed him in a taxi, paid the driver to take him home directly, called his wife and tell him when I was done. His fatigue increased that night, so he had a little bit of this porridge, and wow. Parsons called me the next morning and commented, "It's funny to have a hangover 21 months after having stopped drinking. There is no difference between the fatigue this morning and a bad alcoholic hangover." He went on to describe how he had to crawl to the bathroom because he was too weak and dizzy to walk, and that his lassitude, dizziness, and uneasiness could be relieved just like that, as if by the snap of the fingers with a drink. When he asked me what is wrong with me, I explained he was having a true hangover, not from bourbon, but from corn, its principal ingredient. He had apparently been allergic to wheat, barley malt, and corn, as well as certain other foods, for years without realizing it. His addiction to bourbon had been an attempt to get a high level of cereal grains into his system as rapidly as possible and to maintain that level of stimulation to avoid the hangover. His more recent headache and fatigue could be explained by the perpetuation of his corn and wheat addictions, but at a much lower unsatisfactory level by the use of more slowly absorbed wheat and corn-containing foods. So his allergy addiction was so strong, the only way he could keep it at bay was by drinking supercharged corn, wheat, alcohol. That way he could stay ahead of the hangover. But when he just ate plain old wheat or plain old corn, he could not do it. By avoiding wheat, corn, and a few other incriminated foods, Parsons found that his headache and fatigue not only subsided, but what is more, his craving for alcohol disappeared. So he had this allergy. It was undiagnosed. Finally, he got in the hands of an intelligent doctor. It was uncovered, unmasked. It was tested, and by God, it was really there. and he was advised stay off wheat, stay off corn, and in a fairly short period of time, all those daily negative problems he had, the headaches and fatigue, went away. And I'm just going to say it again, his craving for alcohol disappeared. So what was he really craving? Was he craving alcohol, or was he craving a supercharged version of this food to which he had a advanced addictive allergy? This craving is, of course, the bane of many ex-alcoholics' existence. One can, with extraordinary willpower, stop drinking, but it is far harder to conquer the desire to drink. Parsons' case suggested a possible reason for this difficulty. The consumption of other grain-containing foods would perpetuate the underlying problem, the food addiction allergy. Thus, in a sense, the alcoholic is never completely free of his alcoholism as long as he is consuming the foods that constitute his addictant. Parsons, for example, carried around with him a pocket of candies containing corn sugar, which he sucked whenever he had the urge to drink. This was, in fact, the standard operating procedure of his Alcoholics Anonymous unit. Through practice, these individuals had found that they could relieve their craving for grain-containing alcoholic beverages by sucking on another, rapidly absorbed form of grain. They had, in effect, transferred food addiction in its highest form, alcoholism, to food addiction in a less severe form, and from the addict's point of view, a less satisfactory form, addiction to corn sugar. When Parsons realized that he was actually perpetuating his problem by eating this candy, he stopped immediately and avoided all contact with wheat, corn, and related foods that had been implicated. Let's see. What are these food components? Oh, and then here we go. And it's pretty clear. If you got a corn allergy and the drink is made with corn, and you got a really wicked one of these, you remember, we got to go way back to the beginning, back at the turn of the last century. Doctors in Europe and the United States were learning that you could have a super heightened allergy to something. Super heightened, like not runny nose, but like you lose your mind, literally, right? And it could come from any source, not just dust, not just, cat dander. But then the German and French chemical companies corrupted medicine in Europe, and then the corrupted doctors of Europe came to the United States and corrupted the medical professionals of the United States, and they dropped this branch of medicine. And it was picked up in the 40s, continued on until the 70s and 80s. There are probably some people still practicing it, but it's not as well known as it should be. So that's pretty obvious, right? If you had corn allergy, super corn allergy, and there's alcohol that has corn in it, you could have a problem. But sometimes people would have reactions to a food and a different liquor. So, for example, why did corn-sensitive patients react to Scotch whiskey? Scotch comes from the British Isles, but no corn is grown there. Why did grape-sensitive people react to Puerto Rican and Cuban rum, but not to Jamaican rum? There's a whole bunch of examples like that, sort of mysterious things. Let's look at the rum one. So again, let's get this right. So a guy with grape sensitivity reacts to Cuban or Puerto Rican rum, but not to Jamaican rum. Why did that happen? Well, Jamaican rum, like other rums, is made from corn sugar. However, the laws of Jamaica demand that rum manufactured there be bottled on the island, whereas Cuba and Puerto Rico rums are shipped from their home ports to the United States in big hogshead barrels. Most of these rums were then blended with up to 2.5% grape brandy before bottling. Hence, grape-sensitive patients could be expected to react to the Cuban and Puerto Rican rums. So there's a lot of, you got to know how things are made, and it's not necessarily easy to find out how things are made to really get to the bottom of some of these things. So anyway, these are two books. They're both hard to find, but if you search around, you might be able to find them. One is Dr. Mandell's 5-Day Allergy Relief System by Dr. Marshall Mandell, Mandell. The other is An Alternative Approach to Allergies. The New Field of Clinical Ecology Unravels the Environmental Causes of Mental and Physical Ills by Theron G. Randolph, MD. And why this isn't common knowledge, why this isn't tested on every single person who ever develops an alcohol problem is kind of a mystery. But when we know how the world works, and we know all the people whose bread is getting buttered by not knowing the answer and suppressing that answer, then maybe we have our answer. So, consult your physician. And get these books, and maybe they'll help.